Check, 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 check. Is the sound working now on your meeting? Check, check, check. Is that a current yes? Check 1, 2. Can somebody give me a thumbs up or a affirmative? Okay, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, just this is a 5-minute note. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. Thank you. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here in just a second. Please find your seats. I appreciate it. Thank you. Warren, buddy. I got it. I'm good. I'm good. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the symposium. My name is Colonel Robert Grant, and I'll be helping MC today a little off and on with some of our other key staff members that have been helping put this symposium on. We are so glad you're here. I'd like to welcome you to the first full day of the inaugural Strategy and Warfare Center Symposium titled Future Conflict and Disruptive Technology. Yesterday, we explored the history of future conflict and heard from General Wright, who challenged us to not only think about disruptive technology, but disruption with technology, as well as normative versus formative uses of technology in warfare. Additionally, the history department entertained us with a very dynamic panel, taking us back in time to look at how future conflict has been considered in the past and events since Vietnam, what we got right and what we got wrong. Today, we will explore the emerging technologies that will impact the coming decade, along with the threat that is out there. We have an amazing lineup of speakers today and panels, but first, some admin. First of all, please make sure your cell phones are silent. The cadets' schedule and timing, initially this was intended to line up with those class timings. Unfortunately, due to some speaker changes and some natural fog and friction of war, we have had to make some adjustments. And so we understand that some of the panels are going to go past or beyond those times and not work out exactly right. If you do need to leave or come in not aligned with the timings of the events, that's okay. Just ask that you, of course, make yourself and put yourself in a place that might present the least disruption as possible, but recognize it's probably not going to be the best situation in that regard today. We are at an unclassified level all day today. Food and drink, obviously, please help yourself to the refreshments in the back. They're there for you. And the only thing we ask is that you don't bring food and drink down into the main common area here in the seating area, please. Exits, the main exit is going to be straight out back those double doors through Arnold Hall. If we have any kind of emergency that we have to respond to for any reason to evacuate the building, we're going to go straight out to the front of the Arnold Hall and over into the parking lot area. Closest restrooms right over here to my right, your left in the back corner, and there are also restrooms over in Arnold Hall as well as needed. We are live streaming today, so as we ask questions and interact with the speakers and panels, you'll notice there are mics on either side of the room. We have folks that will be helping out and pass the mics around as well, but feel free to come up and speak from the mics as well. That being said, of course, all the recordings are live, and so as that case, there could be potential interesting discussions. I just ask that any sidebars be limited or at least very quiet, and we do have access to all of the collaboration rooms here on the left and right side of the main area for everybody's use. If there's any breakouts or follow-ons from with any of our speakers, or you just need to take a conversation off to the side. Last but not least, we're gonna, in the spirit of a true symposium and conference, we are not gonna honor typical protocol and calling the room to attention when our senior officers come on and off stage. We'll definitely be offering a strong and hearty warm welcome in those cases. So for today, we're gonna start our event with comments from Dr. Stephen Wax. He's the Acting Deputy Chief Technology Officer for Science and Technology in the Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering. I think I got that right. He oversees the DoD Science and Technology Enterprise, including DoD labs, federally funded research and development centers, and university-affiliated research centers. His portfolio covers everything from basic science research, small business innovation and research, and DoD manufacturing technology. He holds degrees in chemical engineering and a doctorate in ceramic engineering from the Georgia Institute of Technology, and Dr. Wax has worked in the defense R&D field for nearly 45 years. He was an Air Force officer assigned to AFRL's Human Effectiveness Directorate. He worked at DARPA, including roles as Deputy Director and Senior Scientist, and prior to his current assignment, he was the Chief Scientist for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. He will be joining us remotely. We have approximately 25 minutes for his remarks plus questions as we move into the rest of the day. Dr. Wax, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. Sir, the floor is all yours.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Gotcha, sir.
Okay, great. So first of all, thank you all for inviting me. I wish I could be there. Last September, we just had a wonderful vacation in Colorado. I love the area, but unfortunately we could not. So I also love the opportunity to talk about technology. As you could hear from my background, I've spent a lot of time in research and development. As I said, some of the cool things as office director at DARPA, just an amazing organization, and some time at DITRA. And now I'm in the Pentagon. I'm here to help you all. I'm going to try to kind of go over some of the key technologies we talked about. I hope I actually don't have to convince you all. You're at this symposium. I hope you all understand how important science and technology is. You know, the things that really make us work as a Department of Defense, of course, are the amazing men and women who wear the uniform, as you all do, and those who, of course, support those folks, and also the incredible technology and innovation that we've had over the years that has led to some amazing breakthroughs and some amazing advances to support those war fighters, and really has given our country over the last, I don't know, probably since shortly after World War II, significant technology advantage over our adversaries. I was gonna show an org chart, and I will spare you all an org chart, but I'll say a little bit about what the Undersecretary of Defense Research and Engineering does. I work directly for the Honorable Shu. She is the Chief Technology Officer for the department. And so her job is to ensure that all this amazing technology development continues to support our warfighters. And she also, and this is in an age which I'm sure you understand, our adversaries are getting much, much better at the very technologies that we used to lead. So this is kind of a critical time for technology, because we want to maintain our technical advantage, and it's tougher and tougher given all of the commercial work and all of the technology that our adversaries are pursuing. So in this position as Undersecretary, she has a seat at the table with the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary, and a lot of influence in the department. Her responsibilities range everywhere from making sure we have the most fundamental basic research done to how we exploit technologies and ultimately demonstrate the effectiveness of those technologies to support joint warfighting capabilities. So obviously everything done in the service, everything is actually done in the services. Almost all of the work, research and development, of course, the fighting is all done by the services. But her job is to make sure that our technology is in concert with the Secretary of Defense's priorities and ensures we'll maintain some advantage. So today we'll spend some time talking about a few specific innovative technologies, but I think it's always important to remind people that those technologies that gave us such a strategic advantage only thrive because we have an amazing defense ecosystem, a defense industrial base that supports those capabilities. And so part of research and engineering's responsibility is to guarantee that those underpinnings of that ecosystem are maintained. So we need to make sure we have a strong basic research program, that we support, that we have a strong defense laboratory system that can support both workforce and infrastructure. And of course, organizations like FFRDCs and UARCs or University Applied Research Centers, and then really sort of the whole defense industrial base and really part of our commercial base. We need to make sure that that's all working in concert to support the development of our capabilities. Another area that's, I think, becoming more important every day is this balance between the open kind of work research we've done over the years that really has been part of our success as the country that has that, you know, we were the place everybody wanted to come. Everybody wants to study in the United States. And that's a great asset because we get great talent coming in. At the same time, now protecting that technology becomes even more important. And that's a very difficult balance, which we could spend an entire symposium on. But something to keep in mind as you go out is that they really do have this tenuous balance between how do we maintain a robust science and technology program and still protect the most important information from giving our adversaries an advantage. So with that background, I'd like to delve into discussion of some of the innovative technologies across the department. See if I can do this cleverly. Okay, see, I skipped the org chart. I hope everyone's happy about that. So before I get into specific technologies, I wanted to take a moment to talk about a set of 14 technologies that the Undersecretary basically announced in February. And these are the critical technology areas. You will see the areas that you are talking about today on this chart. That shouldn't be a surprise. But there are an awful lot others that are really important and things that aren't on this chart. So I think they're broken into 3 different areas. The seed areas, and we'll certainly talk about quantum today. The areas that really have a good balance in commercial and defense activities. AI and autonomy are on that list. And so, and then there are some defense specific ones, directed energy, hypersonics, integrated sensing and cyber. Interestingly, your symposium kind of spans that gamut. And so the technologies and the things we do in quantum are very different than the things we're doing, obviously, in hypersonics in terms of where the technology is and how far along it is to supporting the warfighter. And so I want to take a little bit of time today, and I won't use all my time. So hopefully there'll be a lot of questions. So I want to start with a discussion of AI and autonomy. I won't say a lot. I don't have a chart on it, for example. But I think, obviously, if you don't know by now, I mean, I'd be really surprised if you don't fully understand how critical autonomy and autonomous systems are to defense and how important trusted AI is to that capability. We hear a lot about artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence and machine learning are going to solve all our problems. Give me a large data set, I'll figure it out. One of the thing I wanted to say today, and maybe you've heard this before, but it really bears repeating, is that AI in particular and autonomy in general are very, very different when applied to defense systems, because, well, I'll explain in a second. So you know, we've seen
Good morning, Mr. Cologne.
autonomous vehicles. What we probably understand is
Thank
that
you, you too.
organizations like Google and Tesla have run millions and millions of miles and developed an amazing database for which almost everything a car could encounter has shown up in that database and how to react to it. And from that, they can use artificial intelligence to pull out the general driving rules and the precepts of how you run our car. And there are a lot of other things. Google searches are like this as well. Department of Defense doesn't have the benefit of large data sets. You know, we can't run a tank 1 million miles to see how we can build an autonomous tank. And the other important thing is those large data sets work because underlying them is a set of principles that drive that data. So we understand how cars work, we understand how airplanes work. And so it's relatively easy to build AI systems that can autonomously drive those capabilities. But most of defense is, the one thing you know about defense and defense systems is that there really are no rules, or pretty much all exceptions. So imagine if an artificial intelligence system learned to play a game like chess or Go, and it was very good at that capability, and then somebody changed the rules, added a third color in Go, changed the way knights moved in chess. That's really what happens on the battlefield, is that you start off thinking you have a certain set of rules, and then they change. And so for defense, one has to understand how an autonomous system and the AI that supports it can recognize that the rules have changed and can adapt to those changes, or in the worst case, understand that it is no longer capable of operating in that environment because the rules no longer match the way it was trained. That's a really complicated artificial intelligence problem. Has not yet been solved, but I know there are a lot of smart people working on it. And so hopefully it's someday that'll be, but that's something to keep in mind as we think about AI and autonomy. Trusted AI is difficult also, but it's complicated by the fact that in our environment, the rules change. And so it really leads the question, does that AI system, that I've trusted in situations I understand, can I trust it in a situation I don't? And that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm sure you'll have much smarter people talking about that in the future. Okay, the next area I want to talk about quickly is hypersonics. So as you, I'm sure know, and I can't say a lot, this is one of those topics you can't say a lot on this line, but I'm sure you know that our adversaries are deploying very high-end systems as part of their area access and area denial capability. And in response, of course, we have a lot of programs that we are developing. One of the things to keep in mind, and this is something that our Undersecretary says all the time, is this isn't an arms race. If the enemy has 1,000 hypersonic systems, it doesn't mean that we need to have 1,001. Because we fight differently, we have different missions, where we are defending things more than attacking things. So we really have to be smart about the systems we develop. And in fact, what we're doing is developing systems that match our other capabilities and are really for specific missions that are important to us. And I obviously can't say those here, but if you just think about the Pacific and things that might happen in the Pacific, you get the general gist. So at the same time, and this is where this chart comes in handy, at the same time that we're thinking about how to build current systems with current capabilities, we have to think about for us how we move forward. What does our future look like? Because if we're going to get an advantage, then we have to develop leap ahead capabilities. So here's, hopefully you can see this, different challenges as we go on in time. Thinking about the future, we're going to have increasingly complex and very difficult targets. So again, this chart was written very carefully, but you can't say much more than this chart. But what I can say is, we want to be able to hit things that move, for example. And right now that's really hard. And I won't say any more. So again, think about both as you're listening in your symposium, what our current capabilities are, but also what we need in the future. And the one other thing I will say is one of the biggest challenges to these systems is not the aerodynamics or the guidance. So those are all really hard. It's how do we actually build them? How do we build them effectively? How do we build them cheaply enough so that we can use them? And that is really a lot of its material science, a lot of its manufacturing. And so there are a lot of underpinning technologies that really will allow hypersonics to happen. I'm watching my time. Okay, the next, going the wrong way, sorry. Okay, the next one is quantum science. So DoD has a strong history in quantum science, and you could think of it as the fundamentals of science. How do the qubits work? How do you harness entanglement? And then you can think of applications. That is, what do I do with this quantum technology? So I've got really cool things. And if sometimes it gets a little beyond my understanding, but if you think about some of the amazing functions that quantum, does, the ability to do things in parallel, because as you know, there really aren't any set states. They're all probabilistic. So you can think about a lot of capabilities. And then the question is, how do those translate into actual technologies? Actually, the next chart is really an interesting chart because it's an honest chart. And it says, here are all the cool things you can do with quantum, but here's how ready they are for us to do them. And I hope you notice that on the top left, upper part, that is really difficult, a huge impact, but not quite ready, is full-scale computing. And so, although everybody thinks of quantum computers, I would say for Department of Defense, that's a long way off. And for other reasons, I won't say a lot here. or hope it's a long way off. But there are a lot of things that we are now pushing forward. For example, sensors, quantum magnetometers, for very precise timing using quantum effects to build very low cost chip scale atomic clocks with very, very small error, supplanting the capability of GPS. So in the world of quantum, there are some things that are really ready for prime time with a lot of work, and there are some longer things. There also are some quantum computing sort of limited scale, if you see that big bubble in the middle, where you don't have to be fault tolerant, you don't have to be as precise as doing a full-scale quantum computer, but that's still amenable to doing some really interesting optimization problems. So overall in quantum, one could think about how all the possible applications. I will just say that from the defense point of view, we are pushing really hard on things that actually will be out in the field in terms of sensors, and a lot of precision navigation and timing capability. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to say is a bonus, because it's not one of your technologies, it's biotechnology. So when you think about biotechnology, I'll put this chart up, although when you think about biotechnology, everybody thinks about health. And of course, we certainly in vaccines, that certainly has come to the fore over the last several years. And all the things that are related to health capabilities. But biotechnology is also a really interesting way to make things. In fact, it makes beer, which is really biotechnology. And so what we are recognizing is there's an opportunity for defense to harness biology, to actually make products that are of value to defense in a way that is maybe greener or allows you to produce things. Let me see what the next chart. I'll skip this part. So the key to all of making all this work is biomanufacturing. What we're trying to do is build an industrial U.S. capability, U.S. and partner capability to actually do large-scale biomanufacturing to produce things you can see on your right, like high-performance fuels or rare earths or some fire-resistant composites. Biology has the capability for being, I will say, tricked into, so it obviously, as you know, biotechnology, bacteria, for example, make things that they need to survive, but biology can be tricked into making things we want, even things like semiconductors. And in fact, we now can prepare a runway using biotechnology, which basically secretes a compound that can be used to repair a runway. The advantage here in we're using biotechnology is we can have point of on demand at the point production. So we can make fuels with biotechnology at a forward base, or even in a much more forward environment, solving some of the logistics problems. So, I mean, I think I'd like to close by saying that, for those of you who are going to be pilots, or even those of you going to be flying, you can think about biotechnology as providing the fuel for the plane. Then you might drop some or use some explosives that are produced with biotechnology, land on a runway that was maintained and repaired with biotechnology. And then after you're safe and sound, you can go to the O Club and have some beer that was made with biotechnology. So thank you very much. And I think we have some time for questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. We will open the floor now to questions.
Quite proud.
All right, so we've got the first one.
Okay.
Hello, sir. C3C Brock Miller. So you mentioned that within your department, they mentioned that just because our adversary has 1,000 missiles doesn't mean we need 1,001. Are you referring directly to our technology being greater, or just the fact that we may not fight the same way as?
I think that well, we hope the former happens, but specifically it's the latter. If you think about, again, being a little careful, if you think about what we might be doing in the Pacific, right, it's going to be a very different thing, or because it's going to be a defensive thing, for example, compared to what our adversary might be doing. So if our adversary is taking a particular aggressive action, right, our job is not to figure out how to do the same aggressive action, it's to defend that. And so our missions will be different. And in particular, the use of hypersonics will be different, very different than how they're using them, because of where we are, where we're located in relation to where our adversaries are. But that actually applies for a lot of technologies, and that's actually applied for. So some of it comes from the idea that we'll have technical advantage, but in terms of building systems, for example, like hypersonics, we're building them to do the things we need to get done, not just to keep up and say we have a big hypersonics program. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
All right, next question, sir.
Hi, sir. Dr. Talbot. I'm on the MSS faculty. I have a former cadet who's working biotechnology fuels, and I got the impression that it was to make the environment more friendly, but your slide talks about high performance density fuels. I'm just wondering if you can comment.
It's a little both, right? So obviously, if you can make fuels with bio technology, it's cleaner. But there is some advantage to the performance of the fuels. I don't think that means to say higher performance. What we're trying to do is build fuels that are as performing. So there's two advantages. One is the environment is cleaner because we're not using, petroleum, for example. But the second advantage is the scale is such that you can produce those fuels on site in a forward base or forward expedition. So there's two advantages. So you can see reduced logistics comes both from the standpoint, so in fact, this chart shows the advantage here is reduced logistics. That is, we can produce those fuels in a forward environment. There's also the green nature of biology comes to play for almost all of these. That is, we can make things without using compounds that have been carcinogenic or in some cases are pollute. So it's both of those things. Does that help?
I'm getting a head shake. Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Any other questions? So we've got time for one more, and I'll ask that. Of all the technologies that are out there that we are showing and kind of grouping into what we are putting our efforts into, how are we determining the technologies or the sciences to put the most priority or weight of effort in effort-wise, especially as we look out into an ambiguous
So good. Let's see. So my crystal ball is a little broken. So that's actually a really interesting question, a really challenging question, which probably, is the answer to that is only as good as we actually can predict what really 10 years from now looks like. What I will say, though, is that there is a large effort across the department, certainly by research and engineering, to try to get that, make that assessment, to try to understand what the adversary's capabilities are and how the technologies we're developing can mitigate those advantages. And so the attempt is to try to make these assessments, as quantitative as possible. So I would say that that is an evolving effort. The understanding clearly is that you can't put everything on everything, right? And even those 14 is a large number. So you're absolutely right. Prioritizing across technologies is a very difficult problem. I will say we have some folks that are trying to rigorously do the red-blue work to try to understand where we get the biggest bang for the dollar. But I would say it's going to be a little fuzzy because we're still making assumptions about both how the adversary is now and how the adversary might be 10 years from now. Does that help? But
Absolutely, sir. Thank you
it's a
for
really
your
good question.
answer.
And it's not being ignored. It's being worked as well as I think it can be worked, given the ambiguities of that kind of a review.
Awesome. Well, sir, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and all the cadets today. Greatly insightful words. And again, we
Well,
appreciate your
thank
time.
you all, and also thank you all for the careers you're going to have. I had 20 years in the Air Force and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I know you guys will as well. So,
Sir, we do have a parting gift for you. Unfortunately, you're a few thousand miles away, but we'll be sure to get that for you, sir. And we've got
great.
our
Thanks.
gift, the
Appreciate it.
proverbial bird. So thank you so much for
Okay,
your time.
thank you very much. All right, bye.
All right, I'm just gonna ask as I continue to transition here and update, present our next speaker. Feel free to come and go as you need to and take seats, but I'm gonna make it a working transition here based off of our time that we have. So now I'd like to, as we change and prep the stage for our next guest speaker, that's gonna be Major General Parker Wright, who is the Director of Intelligence and Information, North American Aerospace Defense Command and U.S. Northern Command, both headquartered here at Peterson Air Force Base, Colorado. In this capacity, he serves as the Senior Intelligence Advisor to the Commander of NORAD and U.S. NORTHCOM and directs all intelligence operations for both commands. Major General Wright commissioned in 1996 as a distinguished graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy. He is a career intelligence officer with a variety of operational assignments, including squadron, group, wing, and joint commands. Brigadier General Wright has deployed in support of air operations over Iraq, Afghanistan, and the Balkans. And general staff assignments include headquarters, U.S. Air Force, USAFE, and the Joint Staff. Major General Wright holds advanced degrees from Harvard Kennedy School of Government and the School of Advanced Air and Space Studies, and was a National Defense Fellow at the Center for a New American Security. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm welcome for Major General Wright.
Busy. Good to know. Yeah.
Turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Darnell.
You want me? Where you want me? Is this you want me over here? All right. How's everybody doing? Hey, Ariel. How are you? Good to see you. Ariel has the best wing in the United States Air Force. So it's gonna get hot. Okay.
So, sir, welcome to the Air Force Academy once again, and the place where you started your career is a very, very distinguished graduate of class of 1996.
There's no such thing as very distinguished.
Oh yes, sir. It's but we have read through your bio, of course, and just really appreciate all that you bring to the conversation today, and appreciate you spending the time with us, talking to us about NORAD and NORTHCOM.
Happy to do it. You got me out of a morning intel briefing, so thanks. Normally I start my day off at 07 with a pre-brief for the ops and intel briefing that we give to General Van Herk and the staff. So you gave me a day off, so thanks.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, and I know they do too. So we've got as we said in the back, a mixed crowd with us today. So the majority of which are military and strategic studies majors. Some visiting here from we have ROTC cadets from Minnesota, and then also CU Boulder came down to see us, and very, very pleased to be with you, sir. But so we'll go ahead and begin. So you currently serve as the Director of Intelligence and Information at North American Aerospace Defense Command and U.S. Northern Command, NORAD and NORTHCOM. Can you tell us about the current operational focus of each, explaining the dual commands and the nuances of binational operations? And second to that, how do international relationships factor into your responsibilities?
Yeah, sure. So NORAD and NORTHCOM are two different commands. One commander, so General Van Herk serves as the commander for both. When he's wearing his NORAD hat, he works for both the president and the prime minister. And so that's a binational command that dates back to the Cold War, back when the two commands or the two countries decided to come together and collaborate what was principally a Soviet Union threat. Back in the day, the Soviet bombers would have to come over the pole and launch their missiles within within North America. And so we teamed together, set up a series of radars, which we now call the North Warning System, to be able to provide that threat warning for that Soviet threat. That has emerged and changed over time. The NORAD mission is really three. It's aerospace warning, maritime warning, and then aerospace control. So you can think of any threats that are inbound to the homeland. General Van Herk has a very limited window where he's able to provide integrated threat warning and then attack assessment for those inbound threats. On the NORTHCOM side, NORTHCOM stood up after 9/11. So a year after 9/11, the command stood up and was principally focused on the terrorism threat from aviation. So you think Operation Noble Eagle. That mission evolved with principally out of what we experienced during Hurricane Katrina, when the federal government had to support what was going on down in Louisiana. That mission set we call defense support to civil authority. So if the Department of Defense is going to provide any kind of military support to that civil authority, that is commanded and controlled by General Van Herk wearing his NORTHCOM hat. He also has responsibilities for missile defense. So inbound missiles, as they're launched, let's say from North Korea, General Van Herk has authority to engage those weapons as they're inbound. And then lastly, we're in the NORTHCOM mission side is the theater security cooperation. So every combatant command has a given area of responsibility. And within that area of responsibility, we'll work with partners to help improve their capacity. And so in this case, in our AOR, there's 3 countries, Canada, which is a really close and enduring partner. In fact, I have a number of Canadians that work in our Director of Intelligence. I have a deputy who's a Canadian colonel. And so a lot of muscle memory reps and sets with the Canadians. To the south, Mexico. So we have partnerships with Sedena. Sedena is their Army and Air Force, and then SAMAR, which is their Navy and Marine Corps. And so we have partnerships to enable them to be able to manage threats within Mexico and on our south border to make sure that that we're good partners there. And then the third country in our AOR is the Bahamas. And so that's a hardship tour to have to go down and do some partner capacity building down in the Bahamas. But we do that as well, and that's theater security cooperation. And you asked about the aspect of international cooperation, particularly in the intelligence business. We have a lot of history of working in that coalition environment. In fact, we call it the Five Eyes, right? So in that Five Eyes network, we share just about everything. I'll tell you that our production within NORAD and NORTHCOM, about 90% of that is produced at the rail level. And I won't ask Ariel what her percentage is. I think it's much lower. And that's because some of the information she has just can't be shared. But at the Combat Command, as we produce, we do so in a way that we can share that data, share that intelligence, so that we can partner together.
Great. Thank you very much. So shifting to issues more closer to home. So with the release of the latest national security strategy and defense strategy in October of 22, each emphasized competition with China and constraining Russia. with integrated deterrence as a major means of doing so. How does science and technology developments feature in NORTHCOM's approach?
Yeah, so I would tell you we look at the current threat and the future threat. And I'll tell you the current threat, the country that poses the biggest and most proximate threat to us right now is Russia, right? However, China is about 5 to 10 years on their heels and rapidly accelerating the fielding of threats that are going to threaten the homeland. We like to say that there is a persistent proximate threat in all of the domains to the homeland. The way you combat that, so the strategy that we have at NORAD and NORTHCOM is contingent upon global integration, because the threats to the homeland typically don't originate in our area of responsibility. Those threats can emerge from anywhere in the globe, which means that there has to be a tight lash up between the combatant commands. So as a bomber takes off inside Russia, it's flying within the EUCOM area of responsibility. If a Chinese sub takes off or departs port from its Pacific base and heads east towards our West Coast, that originates in another area of responsibility. So the global integration is incredibly important. To do that, we're going to rely on new technologies that help us collaborate at speed. That's all predicated upon a common intelligence picture, right? Common shared domain awareness. There are good investments in the domain awareness field that we need to be able to lash up with the infrastructure that we have on the operational side, and then to be able to apply those sort of big data analytics, machine learning that help us make sense of that information, right? To give us information dominance. General Van Herk, the one thing he wants more than anything is decision space. And that's based on time. He wants to be able to give the Secretary of Defense and the chairman time to make decisions and options, because the earlier you act, the more options you have. The last thing we want to be doing is defending kinetically an attack on the homeland. What we want to do is push that as far to the left as we can, right? To give decision space. We may have options that are non-kinetic. We may have diplomatic options. We may have informational options. And all that's predicated on moving that awareness of a threat further to the left to create that decision space and then give our commander decision superiority.
As a sub question to that, where do you think what is the hardest topic in all of that? Is it technology? Is it processes?
No, I think this conversation 10 years ago would be different, but the technology just wasn't there. The computing power that we now have gives us opportunities that we just didn't have previously. So I think the tech is getting there. I think there are policy considerations that are really more adapted to a industrial age set of problems, and that as we are now in an information age, that we need to update policies, we need to update structures. And then old guys like me have to be willing to do things differently. We have to be willing to adapt. In the intelligence business, we're really comfortable with taking the data, applying an intelligence analyst to look at it, applying a confidence level to make sure that what we're seeing makes sense. We have a whole set of tradecraft that we do so that when we give an answer to General Van Herk, we're very comfortable that we're going to be right about that answer. That's not going to work when you're in combat at speed and you need to be able to make decisions faster. So the ability to accelerate that and then be comfortable with that bit of ambiguity and uncertainty is something that we're going to have to get better at, right? The global war on terror, the 2 decades of fighting with an adversary that was not technologically advanced, where we could park a predator over the top and watch a person for 3 days and get a pattern of life and then decide to act to take them out. That's not going to happen when you're talking about a peer threat and a peer fight with compressed timelines and no comms and relying on individual initiative. We got to get back to competencies of fighting a peer adversary. And not just one, there's two of them, right? We've never faced two peer adversaries that are nuclear armed. And so now we're triangulating in a way that we haven't had to before.
All right, and that actually leads us pretty well to the next question, which related to decisions at speed against the peer adversary. One major topic for our entire forum over these 3 days is hypersonics. So regarding both China and Russia, they've made very public strides in the area of hypersonic weapons development. Is there anything you can tell us about the hypersonics technologies and how they change the way NORAD and NORTHCOM do business?
Yeah, so, hypersonics isn't new. Intercontinental ballistic missiles that release a warhead, those fly at hypersonic speeds. What's different is the maneuverability, right? So a lot of our architecture is optimized for a ballistic threat, right? It's a math problem. If something's ballistic, it's going to follow a known trajectory. You can optimize your sensors to collect on it. You run the math, and then you can figure out where to intercept. The new family of weapon systems are maneuverable, highly maneuverable, and will fly in at levels below the architecture, right? So we don't have that ballistic trajectory that gives us the kind of predictability that makes warning and defending easy. Russia has fielded the Avangard weapon system, and it flies about 6,000 kilometers at about Mach 27. So pretty tough to defend against that. Not just to defend against it, but to know where it's going. So if you're General Van Herk, his responsibility is to get on the phone and to notify the National Command Authority whether or not DC is under attack. That's easy to do if you're ballistic. If you have a maneuvering vehicle that's below radar coverage, you have complications when it comes to continuity of government. So we are concerned about hypersonics, maneuvering hypersonics. I'm concerned about the pace of testing, right? China's outpacing us about tenfold, right? It's just about every week or month that pros at NASIC are characterizing the latest test that the PRC conducted. I think you'll have a panel with some industry folks later this afternoon. We're not testing at the same rate, right? And testing allows you to wring out problems in your weapon system. And so they're testing about at the pace that we were back in the 1960s. And so they're outpacing us there. That concerns me. I'm not just concerned about hypersonics. I'm concerned about cyber and cyber threats to our critical infrastructure. We anticipate in the early stages of a conflict with a peer adversary that they'll attempt to target our critical infrastructure through cyberspace in order to impede our ability to flow forces to theater and to attack our will to fight. And so think about just all the disruption that happened with the NODAM outage, Southwest scheduling, right? You probably are tracking the Colonial Pipeline incident. You imagine sort of a cocktail of those kinds of cyber attacks and the kinds of disruptions that would cause within civil society, but then think of it being more targeted against our critical nodes where we need to flow forces either by air, by sea. That has us very concerned. We're not only concerned about current cyber threats, but we know that we're under attack every day in the information space. We know our adversaries are attempting to influence our politics. We know they're attempting to influence our decisions daily in the battle space. Technology allows you to do deep fakes and to get after leaders and decision makers in ways that at one point were just science fiction. I'm concerned about quantum, right? As an intelligence professional, quantum communications are much more difficult to intercept than regular currently encrypted communications. So that makes it hard as we look into the future about our ability to get insights in the signals environment. I'm also concerned about quantum when it comes to encryption, and the ability to apply quantum computing against old encryption algorithms and the troves of intelligence that could be unlocked. So quantum is a big deal, and we need a huge investment behind it. And then lastly, the thing we probably don't talk enough about, I think, is synthetic biology, right? The perfect weapon could be a biological weapon that is targeted to an individual's particular DNA, right? What CRISPR has opened up has a lot of promise for, drug or, for cancer treatments and the like. There's a lot of goodness there. But I'm concerned about what a peer state adversary can do with a highly advanced biological weapon that could be introduced into the water stream or the air and target specific individuals based on the DNA that they gave to 23andMe.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating topic. Since we're here at the Academy, I think it's probably worth asking the question, sir. As far as changes to the way we train and educate, so both on the Commandant's side here and then on the Dean's side, do you have any just maybe off the cuff recommendations in terms of, the things to talk through in the classroom, perhaps things which would help all of them be more prepared?
So, the Dean and I are classmates, so we go back. So Linnell's doing a great job, and there's nothing I could tell her to make her do her job better. What I will tell you is I think we have to be comfortable with ambiguity. I think sort of rote memorization, following a checklist will get you so far, but we have to be comfortable operating environments where we don't have perfect information, where we're able to use our imagination, think on our feet, communicate that clearly. So that's I don't build curriculum, but that's what I would ask of the department as well as of the cadets, is that you think through not just the fill in the blank test or the multiple choice test, but how do you do the open-ended questions that you haven't been confronted with before? And frankly, how do you do that verbally? I mean, much of what I have to do every day is answer questions on the spot. And the ability to do that throughout your career, I think, is incredibly important to our decision makers.
Thank you. So speaking of that, we had a nice evening last night. We brought out a number of the cadets with us, and I received I thought was a very great question from a soon-to-be Intel officer, and he asked me. He said, "Is data important? Is data important, and what role should it feature in my thinking and my life as a soon-to-be 14N, and what sorts of skills should I have as I approach Intel School at Goodfellow?" So I would ask the same of you, sir. What sorts of perhaps technical know-how, knowledge of technologies, perhaps AI, machine learning, automation, et cetera, how does that feature in the 14N of tomorrow?
Yeah.
And do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, so to answer the question, yes, data is incredibly important, right? It is the lifeblood. Understanding how the data can be manipulated is going to be important. One of the, what we're trying to do in the intelligence business is to leverage data and machine learning. AI is out there, but leverage that to accelerate the kinds of tasks that humans do slowly or just don't do that well, right? So we'll take for instance, road mobile intercontinental ballistic missile, right? We're currently attempting to train the algorithms with data, both real world data and synthetic data, so that the algorithm can identify a road mobile ICBM much faster than an analyst sitting in an operations center doing processing and exploitation. There are some people who think that the algorithms can ultimately get the intel guy out of the way, right? And we'll just speed up collection to decision maker. You hear it oftentimes, sensor to shooter. And there are times that that can happen and should. There are other kinds of problems that are well into the future before machines could even think about doing the kind of analytic work that that we need humans to do. So in our business, we need to have an appreciation for what data can do and analytics can do, and be willing to get out of the cockpit, if you will, from an intel perspective, while at the same time focusing our skills and techniques on those things that the machines will not be able to do for us. So the competencies that I would ask for a future 14N is largely the ability to have, you know, the versatility to go from tactical to operational, strategic and back. I think intelligence officers are very early on in a career exposed to strategic and operational considerations, not just tactical. And then the ability to flow back and forth, I think, is important. I've already mentioned the ability to act in sort of ambiguous information environments. I would say that you need a degree of moral courage, right? Not just physical courage, but moral courage. Just about every day I deliver bad news to my combatant commander, right? And you can imagine going into the 4-star and giving an information that totally upsets sort of our strategy or plan of attack and all the investment that goes into that. And so the ability to deliver bad news and the courage to challenge conventional wisdom, I think, is incredibly important for our young and intelligence officers.
And we'll round out actually opening the aperture a bit for everybody, since we have a number of soon-to-be flyers in the room and many other specialties. Just any final points of advice, say from a leadership, character perspective as we depart and go into Q&A.
Yeah, so I would say for all the cadets, if you're at the academy and you get your 60 days of leave, right? Or if you're at ROTC and show up when your job starts, right? Show up with a degree of seriousness that you haven't displayed as a cadet, right? So playtime's over. You're big girls and boys now. You're members of a profession of arms with great responsibility. And I think oftentimes there's a hangover. There's a hangover from the experience here at the academy, and it takes a while to catch up. Show up serious, ready for duty, ready to do your job with a level of seriousness that you probably haven't displayed here. And that's not true of everyone. But we're paying you to lead as commissioned officers, and playtime's over, and treat it with the due respect and the responsibility that you're entrusted with. That's the first thing. The second thing I would say is do your job. I think Bill Belichick says do your job, right? Oftentimes folks can get worried about the next thing, right? We're typically planners and we like to plan for the future, and that's great to have goals and objectives. But oftentimes I sense, particularly in young officers, the goal to get to here or to wherever you happen to be. Do your job. The rest will play out, right? There's nothing more important than the job you have at hand. And I often see people less interested in the job that they have and more interested in the job they want, and that rarely goes well. So do your job. And then thirdly, I would say pick your spouse wisely, right? And I say that as someone who is a member of the 1% Club, married my high school sweetheart. Lori and I are still married and we'll celebrate our 25th anniversary. I think it's 25th this summer. But it's a big decision. And the stressors of what you will be asked to do over a career, I think demand that you find the right partner and think through what those 25 years can look like and not just the next 25 minutes. Okay. All right.
Appreciate the sage advice, sir. So we'll actually open up for the rest of the session with Q&A. And so we've got lieutenants out on the wings with the hand mics. And so cadets, please fire away and they will come to you.
Next 17. My question is, we've kind of had a sanctuary in the United States wherein we go overseas to fight our battles. With like new technology and the new cyber threat, how would you now describe the climate with our near peer and acute adversaries in the US?
Yeah, so great question. There is no sanctuary, right? We've trained a whole generation of leaders to assume away attacks on the homeland. It remains very concerning to me to hear the conversations that I get to participate in when we talk about fights that happen on the other side of the globe, and we don't consider all the minor miracles that have to line up to get forces to that theater and the ability to sustain that fight. It should be the first consideration, right? If you read the National Defense Strategy, National Security Strategy, it is number one. I'm not sure that the department has caught up with that thinking, right? Many people take that for granted. Our adversaries have watched the way we fight. They know we contemplate it politically. We then make a decision. We take about 3 months to get resources in place. When we're ready to go, we pick the timing of our attack, right? We own the skies. We can control the comms. There's no issues there, right? That ain't the way it's going to be in a fight with China. It's not going to be that way. We've got to be able to not only fight from the homeland, but I suspect to fight in the homeland. And so over the span of your careers, I mean, I think back 25 years ago, 26 years ago now, 27 years ago, I think, when I was here, I wasn't worried about the PRC. I wasn't worried about the PRC. When I was a squadron commander as a lieutenant colonel at NASIC, when we would track developments of PRC weapons, it was interesting. They were coming along. We would monitor them. We weren't really worried. They were near peer. They're peer now. And in some cases, they're superior to our capability. And they will target us in the homeland. And you got to be ready to fight that. The department's got to catch up. There's been some good momentum and traction and moving in that direction. But it's hard to put our money where our mouth is. China is not an Indo-PACOM problem. China is a global problem. And it's part that every combatant command has to worry about, particularly ours.
Sir, I'm Cadet Second Class Jacob Dosh from Cadet Squadron 38. My question is, what is NORAD NORTHCOM doing to maintain partnerships with the Arctic Council and deter Russian and China aggression and influence in the Arctic?
Good, you read our stuff, I think. So General Van Herk, the AOR that he has, I think almost 70% is in the Arctic. And so with climate change and the opening of the northern route through the Arctic, there's opportunity for Russia to be able to control that trade route, to control certain choke points. We're concerned about that. There's opportunities for China as they look to move goods in the Arctic. China called themselves a near Arctic nation, and they certainly are interested in expanding their access to, as well as the transit through the Arctic. Russia is interested in the ability to control what happens in the Arctic. Russia sits on the Arctic Council, and so there have been meetings since Ukraine that don't include them. You see the countries like the Nordics that are very interested in how we partner more closely, particularly as they think through some NATO accession discussions. So it's certainly something that we're focused on. I will tell you, within my own team, we've established a dedicated Arctic analytic team. Previously, the Arctic team was embedded in our Russia branch, but we felt like we wanted to build a team that was focused Arctic first and then the country, right?
Thank you, sir.
Sir, thank you for joining us today. I'm Cadet First Class Skylar Riley, and you emphasized cyber threats and highlighted several examples where private corporate actors were either targeted or manipulated. In your opinion, does the DoD have the needed authorities to intervene or interdict these threats? And if not, who does?
Probably not. I will tell you that the ability to engage state-sponsored or state-affiliated actors, I believe Cyber Command has the authorities that it needs. That's less about the authority to engage or the ability to engage. The tough part is knowing what's happening in civilian and commercial infrastructure. I'm very confident that we have a good view of what's going on in terms of our own DoD networks. General Nakasone, as the Cybercom commander, has that responsibility to defend the DoDN. Within the rest of the government, that responsibility exists with CISA. So Director Jen Easterly and her team defends the .gov, if you will. But do you know who defends our commercial and civilian infrastructure? Nobody, right? Each of the industries and private companies are responsible for doing that. And so there's movement in the current administration to help shore up those defenses. In the intelligence community, we do as much as we can to notify industry and private companies when they are at risk and when there are threats that we know about that they may not know about, so we pass that on. But I'm concerned about the domain awareness in cyberspace and our ability to be able to give the kind of threat warning that we need to in advance. Right now, we're sort of firing behind the target.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, C1C Store, just kind of building off that last question, how is DoD intelligence working closely with corporate or civilian intelligence in that realm?
Yeah, so there are a number of partnerships that we rely heavily on the Department of Homeland Security, right? So they're the principal interface with industry on these threats. If a private company or a civil authority needed cyber assistance, they would do so through NORTHCOM, request for that assistance through NORTHCOM, and then we would leverage the capabilities of Cyber Command. But right now, a lot of it's voluntary, right? You can imagine the impact on a potential business where there's public disclosure that they have a cyber vulnerability and what that could do to their bottom line. So there are real sort of business incentives why they want to keep that quiet and protected. At the same time, there's a civic responsibility when you're in certain industries to be able to protect water and power and transportation and the like. I'm pleased with what CISA is doing in terms of those partnerships and the routine exchange of information. I think we're moving in the right direction.
We're out of time
Okay.
for the fireside chat, and we really appreciate your time with us this morning.
Great.
And thank you so much. And before we go, we're really honored to have you with us today for lunch. We did have a gift for you. And sir, just to
You giving me the bird?
actually be a different gift.
Ah,
sir.
dang it.
So
Just wanted a bird. Hey, thank you. Hey,
Thank
it's
you,
been
sir.
great.
Thank you
Thanks so much. Yeah, appreciate it. That's great. Hey, so I'm just up the road. So I've offered, particularly for the folks in the audience who are looking at the intelligence business, we're going to attempt to set up a day where you can come in, spend the day with us, see how we do what we do. And so if you're interested, just let this guy know, and we look forward to seeing you down at Peterson. Okay, thanks.
thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it.
All right, everybody. We're going to take a 15-minute break. Please be back in seats in about 12, 13 minutes. Enjoy the refreshments, and we'll hear next from Dr. Craig Martell. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please start making your way back to your seats. We'll be getting started here in about 2 minutes. About 2 minutes. We can do it. We got this. All right, for all my cadets, please come on back down. Glad you're enjoying the food. All right, welcome back while you're filing in and finding your seats. We had a really great discussion so far this morning, and I'm really pleased with the quality of the questions that you guys are providing and asking. For my online members, welcome. I don't think we've got a chance to say welcome to you this morning. So thank you for joining us online. All the ROTC debts out there, plus any faculty or students that are out in the virtual world with us today as well. Well, I'd like to go ahead and transition here to our next speaker. Dr. Craig Martell is the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Officer for the Department of Defense. And Dr. Martell is the department's senior official responsible for accelerating the adoption of data. Seems to be a big topic of the last couple of days so far. Analytics, digital solutions, and AI functions to generate decision advantage from the boardroom to the battlefield. I'm starting to hear and see a couple key themes kind of starting to pull out from across our different speakers. Dr. Martell most recently served as the head of machine learning for Lyft. Previously, he was head of machine learning at Dropbox and led a number of AI teams and initiatives at LinkedIn. Prior to that, Dr. Martell was a tenured computer science professor at the Naval Postgraduate School, specializing in natural language processing. Dr. Martell, thank you for taking the time out. Incredibly busy schedule to be here, and we're honored to have you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Major Stewart.
Thanks, sir. And thank you, Dr. Martell, for being here. Thank you, everybody, for your attendance. So just to start off, can you tell us a little bit about why the office that you hold was stood up and what the SecDef has asked you and your team to accomplish?
Yeah, that's a long answer, but I'll endeavor to make it fit within the appropriate time frame. The Chief Digital and AI Office is the merger of 4 other offices. The CDO, so the Chief Data Office, Advana, which is our business analytics office, the JAKE, the Joint AI Center, and then DDS, which is our surging capability where there are digital problems that can be solved, that need to be solved quickly. They saw that those 4 together actually create what I call this hierarchy of needs for data and AI. Fundamentally at the bottom, we have to get the data right. On top of that, we have to get great analytics. I'm going to pause there for a second and say that the vast majority of demand for AI in the Department of Defense, I believe, is of one of 2 types. Either on the one hand, they want magical pixie dust that solves every single problem so that we don't need people to do that problem for us anymore, or that we can magically have an eye in the sky that knows everything and just tells me the answer so airmen can just press a button, right? That's on the one hand. That doesn't exist. We're not going to have that. A big part of my job is to disabuse people of the notion that that exists. On the other hand, the real solution to what most AI demands are not AI at all. In fact, I don't think AI exists. You're going to ask me that question later. I'll tell you what I mean by that. They're not AI at all. It's really just clean data and a dashboard that tells me where my planes are and what my planes are doing, and if there's a missile launch happening somewhere. So we have this hierarchy of needs that we use to drive forward our thinking. The bottom is data, Chief Data Office. The next layer is analytics, Advana, the analytics office. And on top of that is AI, which was the Joint AI Center. So the fact that the deputy and the secretary decided to merge those together, I think was really prescient, because as distinct entities, they're not going to be able to achieve what I hope we can achieve by merging them all together. And I will talk about when AI is actually appropriate, probably in a later question. But as a person who's done AI my whole career, it's strange that I don't think it's appropriate in most circumstances within the DoD.
Yeah, that's perfect transition, sir. So as you alluded to, we use AI to describe a whole host of things, most of which are not AI. Can you let us know what AI means to the DoD currently and what the vision is for what DoD AI is?
My head of comms is in the audience, and she's going to be very mad if I say something. So I'll say it in a very different way. What she doesn't want me to say is that AI is a scam. Let me tell you what, I'm not going to say that because she doesn't want me to say that. And I think she's right in not wanting me to say that. But sorry, Kathleen. You knew I was going to do it. But what do I mean? The term AI is vacuous. It's meaningless. It was created and perpetuated even now as a demand as a way to get funding from DoD. It was purposely chosen as a phrase so that the Department of Defense would fund it back in the 50s. Because if I tell a general, I am going to give you some intelligence for free and it's not going to cost you any people, that general is going to go, sign me up. I need as much intelligence as possible, and you're telling me I can use a machine to do that? That's what I want. So what is artificial intelligence actually? Well, you notice how you always see it say AI/ML? Have you ever wondered why those two are always together? Because the left side means nothing, and the right side is the AI that actually works. So when we say AI, what I want you to always hear is machine learning. And the reason machine learning is better is the word intelligence is not there. Because if you tell, if you tell any commander intelligence, they're going to want this magical box that's like every movie they've seen that solves all their problems. They're going to want the eye in the sky that tells them everything that they want. Right? AI is wrong. AI is a meaningless term. Machine learning is a very valid term. And what it really means is statistics at scale. You take, and I choose that term, I choose that phrase on purpose, because how do you get statistics at scale? You have massive amounts of data that you have labeled, human beings have labeled, to tell you what you want this data to provide to you. And then you build a model that can differentiate those labels, and then you apply it to the deployed situation, right? This is a really important, I'm sorry, I'm switching into professor mode. Maybe it's the location. Maybe I'll stand up there and give me a whiteboard. But what you're really doing is gathering a bunch of training data. What is training data? Training data is when you go out in the world and you grab the things that you want the system to learn and you put them into buckets. We'll do a real simple solution, spam. What do you do when you get spam, Colonel? Delete it, okay? If you want the system to learn that it was spam, what do you do? Or you move it to the spam folder. Moving it, thanks for saying that, I appreciate that. Moving it to the spam folder, you have just labeled that data. You have said this piece of data, all of these words put together in this certain way are spam. And everything else that you leave in your inbox, nobody reads their whole inbox anymore anyway, so this is a dated example. But it's actually starting to work for text. Do you notice on Apple now when you delete a spam text, iMessage, it tells you delete and mark as spam, right? That's you labeling the data to say this is spam. And so now you have a bucket of messages that you have labeled. You, a human being, have labeled as spam. It's extremely important that you realize that in order for this statistics at scale thing, this machine learning thing to work, is that human beings do the labeling. If you want an eye in the sky that tells me a tank from some armored vehicle, human beings have to get pictures, put squares around it and say tank. Put squares around it and say, sorry, I'm not a warfighter. I don't know what else what you might confuse it with. Ray? Dump truck. Thanks, Ray. But what you've done is actually take different pieces of data and put them into buckets. And then machine learning builds a distribution over those buckets and says, if I see wheels that look like this, or if I see things that, something that looks like a protruding armament in the front of it, it does it in pixel space. It doesn't actually think about wheels or armaments, but it finds the features of this bucket that it represents that are determining of tanks. It finds features over here that are predictive. That's the word I was looking for. Predictive of dump trucks. And then in the future, when it sees a new thing, it says, is it closer to the statistical distribution of tanks, or is it closer to the statistical distribution of dump trucks? I forgot your question. Am I doing okay?
You're doing great.
All right. Yeah. I'm just going to talk, and he can ask me some questions at the end. Is that okay, Major?
That sounds good.
All right. So what are the couple of things that's the takeaway there? One is human beings did the labeling, because the single biggest question I get from general staff is, how can I make that cheaper and faster? And the answer is, you can't. And I'm going to tell you right now, AI will not, ML, you can yell at me afterwards, it's fine. ML will not save you billets. ML will cost you billets. Why? You have to label that data. How is China beating us? China is not beating us because they have access to better algorithms. All algorithms are available now. We're going to pay Google to give us the best in the universe. It's not about algorithms. It's not even about data, although we'll have a big conversation about that in a second, your last question, right? What they do is create labeling farms. They're an autocratic state. They tell their people, you are going to sit in this big room. There are open source photos of this. You can just search Chinese labeling farms. You'll see the pictures. They're just going to sit in these big rooms, tank, not tank, tank, missile, not missile, just actually labeling data, 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, getting paid nothing because they live in an autocratic state. And that's how their AI is going to win, because they have human beings labeling massive amounts of data. Where we don't live in an autocratic state, we have to motivate folks to do that. By the way, why do you think that you have to do CAPTCHAs sometime to prove that you're not a robot? It has nothing to do with proving you're not a robot. You are labeling data for Google. That's what you were doing. You were saying crosswalk, 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 street light, street light, street light, bicycle, bicycle, bicycle. It's got nothing to do with proving that you're not a robot. Maybe the first 2 clicks prove you're not a robot. What ticks me off the most is when it goes to another one, a second one. In that case, I just lie. Just because I'm feeling irritated by the fact that they're forcing me to do this labeling. So if your car can't determine a crosswalk from a bicycle, that's my fault. By the way, I actually think this is what the military should do. I think all of our systems should allow you to log on by doing military top secret CAPTCHAs, because we've got to find a way. If we're going to beat China, and we have to beat China in AI, we have to find a way to label at scale. Because if we don't label at scale, we're not going to win. Okay, so human beings not saving billets. I'm talking to the commanders when I say that. You're not going to save billets. Human beings label the data. Great. You create a distribution. That distribution is based upon the past, because you grab that data from the past. You then take it and use it to predict the future. How well will that work? Cook? Good. It will, what I heard you say, and I appreciate, it will work as long as the future looks like the past. That's what you meant, right? Okay. It will work as long as the future looks like the past. When the future no longer looks like the past, let's say in a war, where vehicles look very different than they did before, where deployed vehicles look different than non-deployed vehicles, because the utilization of the weapon changes the shape of the vehicle, then it will no longer work. So then you need people to pay attention to the model, to figure out where it got it wrong and correct it, so you get enough data to feed it back into the model to get the model right. So where we need to focus our energies is not in building the algorithm. Although those of you in the computer science department, it's a lot of fun building algorithms. And it's a lot of fun learning the math on how to build algorithms. And you should do that. That's a lot of fun. In the deployed world, you're very rarely going to build an algorithm. You're going to buy that algorithm from some vendor, and that vendor is going to spend all of their energy getting you the best possible algorithm. And they're going to, anybody doing computer science, anybody doing AI? Anybody doing ML? Yeah. Okay. So for the folks of you who are doing it, the two of you, I'll say they're gonna maximize their F score. What's an F score? An F score is just the measure of how well the model fits your old data. It's just a measure of how well the model fits the old data. Okay. And they're going to maximize that F score, and then they're going to say, I've got an F score of 0.9. Awesome. It's an awesome F score. It's usually a lie if they say 0.9, but okay. They have an F score of 0.9. But does that tell you how well it's going to work in the deployed situation? No, not at all. Think about if you're trying to determine roads from the air. And now think about how easy it is to determine roads if it suddenly snows. Will the model in the past work well in the snow? I don't know. That's an empirical question that you as operators are going to have to evaluate for that model. Will that model work when there are big, huge craters in the road because it's now a war zone? I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. You have to pay attention to that, and we have to force our contractors. This is a big part of my job. We have to force our contractors to build feedback loops into every system they build for us, because a static model. So you know that old adage that a plan is only. I actually I like Mike Tyson's better. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right? A model is only as good as its first contact with the world. Then it stinks because it was trained in the past, and the past never looks like the future. But you do need feedback loops to figure out when it got it wrong. How does Siri figure out when you got it? So one thing that I think is really important to realize is the warfighter scenario is not industry. Industry is hyper successful. Why? Well, number one, if Siri gets it wrong, nobody dies. You just talk to her again. You just ask again. If you search in Google and you get a document, you don't get documents that work for you, you just research, right? So let's say like Amazon, if it recommends the wrong shirt, you just don't buy it. Amazon can be 70, my wife works at Amazon, so these aren't real numbers. Amazon can be 75% correct and still make $200 billion a year being 75% correct. How would you feel in a war if you were 75% correct? Bad, but it might be okay, right? Because it might be that without the AI, you're only 30% correct. So 75% might be okay. But you as the leader, as the commander, have to decide, is that the risk I'm going to take? It's not magic. It's only 75% correct. Now let's talk about, I'm going off all everywhere. Let's talk about what it means to be 75% correct. There's two kinds of errors a system can make. It can give you a false positive or a false negative. Let's just think about some targeting system. And what the system provides for you is a queue of potential targets. Okay, that's not a lot of cognitive load. You can put some enlisted guys down there, and you can go, yes, target, 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 not a target, 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 not a target. You could put a human filter. Please don't send those targets out without a human filter. That's going to be, I think that's probably a war crime, right? I really do. I really believe if you just let the system tell you you're targeting. Okay, certain circumstances, fine, right? Exigency, it's 2 seconds away, fine, go do it, right? But as much as you can, no, not a target, not a target, not a target. Oops, school, let's not do that, right? So that's a false positive. That's something that's really a negative, not a target, being called something positive, a target. Those are kind of easy to find. The scary ones, so let's say you have a 75% correct model. Well, this is called precision, by the way. If it's 75% correct in precision, that means 25% of the things that say are targets are not targets. Well, here's that Manning problem we talked about. You need someone in that loop to find that 25% and not commit war crimes. Other kind of problem, false negatives. That means 25% of the actual targets were not found. That's the scary problem. If all targets are equally valid, it's fine. Find as many as you can, as fast as you can. You're never going to find them all in a war. That's the choice you guys have to make. Am I okay that there are 25% of targets out there that I have no eyes on whatsoever? What should we do there? My argument, not the contractor's argument. The contractor is going to tell you, we're going to save you so many billets. We're going to save you so many man hours. You can cut your force in half and use our tool. No, you take that other half and you go the old school way and look for those negatives. If not, those negatives are the ones that are going to get you. I forgot where was I going?
You're on a roll, sir.
So AI, there's no intelligence. The whole point when I say that joke, I'm sorry if I hurt you, Kathleen. Are you storming out because I said AI was a scam? Okay. Oh, by the way, her grandfather used to be the superintendent of the Air Force Academy. All right. So you can see him on the major will show you if you want to see it. We put it out to him.
I'll do tours later.
Yeah. It's Clark. It was Lieutenant General Clark, not the current one. So the reason I say AI is a scam is I don't want you to think there's any intelligence. I don't want you to think this machine is going to do your job for you. It is not going to do your job for you. Right? Why do you have to keep your hands on the wheel for an autonomous car? By the way, I don't believe we'll ever have autonomous cars. Everybody thinks I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. That's fine. But why do we have to keep your wheels on the autonomous car? Well, a false positive, if you're looking for the road and it actually sends you to the wall, that would be a false positive. Or a false negative where it's supposed to avoid a wall and it doesn't avoid a wall. That's your job to fix when the system gets it wrong. That is your job to fix when the system gets it wrong. That's why this is not going to save you billets. It will do your job faster for you in right contexts. It will help you find more targets. You do your job more efficiently, particularly in the business world. For running the business of the Army, let's use AI of the military. I know I'm at the Air Force, but for running the business of the departments, let's use AI as much as we can, because if we can get the auditing a little bit better and save and we're not 100%, but it saves us $1 billion. Let's do that. Like no one's dying there. But I really don't want you to believe this is going to save you people. You will have to retrain your people and reuse your people on both sides of that model. Did that answer the question?
Absolutely.
I don't even know what the question was.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue. So it sounds like what you're describing is that AI is not a foundational change to the nature or character of warfare. But if we look at something like lethal autonomous weapon systems and we project that on our adversary, so you've described a very much still a human warfighting process. How do we compete with an adversary who might not have the same ethical or moral dilemma with employing autonomous systems at machine speed?
You threw me a little curveball there. I thought you were just going to say, is it the same? And I was going to say, it's the same in the sense that, notice how I just changed this question to what I wanted. It's the same in the sense that we still need a commander in a loop, and commander's intent is what matters here, and commander's responsibility is what matters here, right? I would love some feedback here from all of you. Just chime in. Because I don't know the answer. If our adversary is willing to take unethical and immoral actions, it's irrelevant whether that's because of an AI system. However we think about warfare as doing warfare ethically in the face of an adversary who doesn't act ethically, that's the answer. So you guys tell me as warfighters, it's important to me that I never come across as feigning to really understand what it means to be a warfighter. I don't, right? So I want to make sure that I'm not sort of giving just sort of tried answers to extremely hard problems. I think that's an extremely hard problem. I think it's the same though. However, if you had an enemy that was willing to do scorched earth and you were not, how did you handle that? Major, how did you handle that?
So I think you have to adapt your tactics to meet the challenge, right? So I don't have a good answer for that as well, but I'm hoping all these cadets in here who will outlive both of us and the DoD will have that answer. So moving away from AI, I think
I'm sorry, I had to finagle that one. I didn't have a good answer.
we've sort of killed AI, I think, a little bit.
But machine learning, let's invest, let's learn, let's do great at it. Please don't think it's saving billets.
Perfect. So to move more into the digital and data side of your role, if we're bringing in hundreds or thousands of disparate sensors in the future, generating just terabytes of data, how do you make that data accessible and relevant to the need, to the commander, to the user, in a way that's effective?
Yeah. This is the DoD, my remit, is the world's largest organization. We have more data distributed in more places with more sovereigns, right, than Google. Right? Google has one sovereign, right? And they're going to all do what he says. There'll be some battles, but he'll win. That's not true in the Department of Defense. There are plenty of people where there are sovereignty barriers. So this is an extremely hard problem. If we had a manageable amount of data, we'd put it all in a singular data center. Let's take Lyft. We put it all in a singular data center. We would have rules for access to that data. We would have a catalog which published what data is available and what it's being used for. Actually, if it's all in one data center, you could just backtrace the data, the API calls, and you could figure out which models are using which data automatically. It's really nice, actually. But Lyft, for example, doesn't operate in a communication challenged environment in a desert where there's no communication, but that model still has to happen, right? So the DoD is a really hard challenge with respect to data management. And so the owner of that is right up there. So I'll point to Greg if I need some help here. But the religion that we believe is the right answer, I choose that word on purpose because we're going to start this as an exercise in faith, is the data mesh religion. And the data mesh religion has 4 principles. First, keep the data close to the source. Don't suck it up into a centralized location. Why? That data next to that sensor with the person who owns that sensor knows that data the best, knows what the kinds of errors are that sensor makes, and can fix those errors in the data itself. So keep the data as close as possible to the producer. That's number 1. Number 2, publish what that data, treat that data, and I'm going to use some words that I do not mean to be offensive, but I think it's the right way to think about it. Treat that data as a product, not an asset. Assets don't have customers. Assets sit in a pile to be used when they're needed. Products have customers who have demands and requirements. Your customers might be the business side of the house, or your customers might be warfighters. They will have different demands. I'll give you an example. If your data has business use case customers, then maybe the latency for that data being gathered and corrected is a month. If your customers have if your data product has warfighter customers, then the latency and the correctness for that, getting that data correct might be a minute, might be a day, might be a week. You need to know your customers so that you can get that data correct for your customers. So number 1, keep the data close to the source. Number 2, all this is going to sound like it's magical and easy. It's still going to be ridiculously hard. Number 2, treat that data as a product and assign the data steward or the owner of the data, make them a product manager. What does that mean? That means that person who owns that data goes and talks to their customers, understands what the demands of those customers are, and commits to a set of service level agreements, commits to commitments about that data. Okay, those are the 2. Number 3, have a centralized catalog that you can search that will tell you what data exists where. And in a perfect world, Greg, in a perfect world, that catalog is across all domains, across all services, and across classifications, and is open to our partners and allies. How? We have to be able to stick in your CAC, that CAC's going to tell, or stick in your ICAM, that's going to tell you what you have access to, and the results returned will be results that only you have access to, right? Okay, so that's number three, have a catalog. And number four, your responsibility as the data product owner to write a nice and clean and beautiful and elegant API with low latency that allows your customers to get access to your data whenever they need to. So this is very different than the normal way of, the older way of doing it, which was warehousing or putting it in a lake. All of those meant sucking it into a centralized location. Not remotely feasible for something like the DoD. We can't suck it into a centralized location. Think about, what do we have, petabytes? More than petabytes? I don't know how much data the DoD has. I don't even think Amazon would be able to support that, right? Like, hey, Amazon, we need petabytes of space with the following latency. Nah, it's not gonna happen. So we keep it where it is. We treat it as a product. We register what it is so other people can find it, and we make it accessible through an API. That's how we're starting to get at that. Once we start that, I have one other thing I want to say about that. Once we start that, we're going to discover that all of that fails, and we're going to have to tweak it in lots of ways, and we will spend our time tweaking that. The other thing we're getting at is taking on some very big projects like the Secretary's dashboard. Well, that's going to require certain amounts of data. And because it's going to be on the Secretary is going to look at it weekly, or the Deputy Secretary is going to look at it daily, everybody's going to snap to and get that data for us. Great. The other one we're going to do is we own the JADC, building the JADC2 data integration layer. So for doing JADC2 well, what data is necessary? Okay, people are going to snap to and get that data for us. Our goal is to choose these big use cases. This is just classic industry way of tackling it. These marquee use cases which help us find the 12 to 15 to 20% of the data that give us 65 to 70% of the value. And after that, we're not boiling the ocean, because most of the ocean I think we're going to throw away. Like most of the data that is gathered, it's unclear to me that most of that data is going to be valuable. And so by doing it this way, we hope to be able to discover the most valuable data first, and then build a virtuous cycle that allows people to get better and better. Everything I just said was a hope, which is why I call it religion. But we are going to go down this path, gung-ho, and when it fails, we're going to fix it, and we're going to tweak it, and we're going to. I tell my team all the time that what winning looks like for us is, say, 5 years from now, standing in front of a pile of bricks with blood on our foreheads because we've been hitting our head against a brick wall for 5 years. The brick wall is finally down, and nobody's going to know we did it. That's success. What you're going to know is, oh, there's my data. I'm going to do my job. Nobody's going to know there's not going to be a magical new product. There's not going to be this, oh, we have to wait for X before we can do our job. Your data will just, most of your data, not all of it, will just be there when you need it. That's winning. That's what winning looks like for us. Lack of recognition and bloody foreheads.
Sounds good, sir.
You guys glad you signed up for that?
So probably time for one more question. You had mentioned just now some industry use cases, and I know you've had some prominent positions in industry like Lyft. How does that time serve you in this position? What are the similarities? What are the differences between doing the work you did in industry and now doing this work for the DoD?
This idea of treating data like a customer, industry doesn't work unless you do that. It just doesn't work. They have the same problem, right? There's massive amounts of data coming in, and there are plenty of places where it can be valuable. And if you just put it in a pile and hope people find it, nothing gets done. So this idea of a product manager and treating data as a product and having customers, I think that's going to be transformative for the DoD. I think even that alone, if you say, these are not assets, these are products, who are my customers? How am I going to prioritize my customers? And what are the requirements of those customers? And do I have what I need to be able to satisfy those requirements? I think that thinking alone is going to have a major impact. And I want to be clear, by saying product and customer, I understand that customers war fighters. I get that they're doing a job very different than selling widgets. Totally get that. But the point is, you have to think about their requirements, and you have to be able to guarantee that they're going to get their stuff when they need it. Thinking like that, I think, is going to be a major change. And also choosing marquee. So this is just a common trope in industry. You don't solve everything. You find one or two marquee customers first, And then everybody else sees how awesome that is and they jump on board. When, you know, I spent 12 years in the DoD as a professor before, and I was always shocked that every solution got scoped for everybody all at once. That, and how well does that work, right? It never solves everybody all at once. And so you get at best the least common denominator. If you want excellence, you find the 3 use cases that the enterprise needs the most. And sure, there's a whole bunch of other use cases that are life-threatening, but you find the 2 or 3 use cases the enterprise needs the most, and you solve those in a way that's generalizable. And then everybody else will start coming on board and solving it themselves. They'll be knocking at your door. Hey, I need your product. Hey, I need your product. Hey, I need your product. You might not like that, by the way, in which case you need to have a very honest conversation with your commander. I want to add one more thing. You need to have a very honest conversation with the department as a whole about how your career can grow simply by managing data. One thing that I think is problematic, I mean, for unrestricted line officers, their success is not being a specialist. Their success is moving their way to being a general officer. That makes perfect sense. Not arguing against that. But there has to be success for people who just want to nerd out for their whole career and solve that absurdly hard problem that is going to continue to be in greater and greater demand. And we can't just say, oh, you're an LDO. I don't know if that's, we used to use that in the Air Force. Restricted line, is that what it would be? Someone who just stays in one slice. And if they stay in one slice of their work, they don't actually get the right level of promotion. They don't get the right level of praise. We as an organization need to promote people on solving digital problems and then not moving them to go solve something that's totally non-digital. Keep them there. Take your best people who are kicking ass at this and promote them to general. And don't force them to have to go all around. Now, okay, I'll let you guys figure that out. Someone who's a general probably should go all around, right? So maybe there is some limitation to it, but let them choose. We need career pathways that allow people to maintain this. I don't want to be black and white about this. Of course, they're going to have to understand the whole enterprise, right? But they're going to, and by the way, as the gray hairs move out and these youngsters take over, more and more and more and more, you're going to be managing people who are managing technology. More and more and more and more. And so you got to be able to give people a pathway for that. I don't know the question. Just another soapbox, sorry.
That's a great job, sir. And we really appreciate you being here. I think everybody found that chat extremely informative, especially with the AI piece. We're not going to go out and call it a scam, but we will at least have a better understanding when we use the
She's so
term.
upset with me.
I think that's all we have time for, sir. And we have a gift as a token of our appreciation for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We're going to picture.
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your time and all the words. We don't, unfortunately. We have to make a quick transition. Thank you so much. What we're going to do here, guys, if you could stay in place as much as possible, but if you need to get up, obviously, and grab something or use the restroom, please do. But just we're going to transition here in about 5 minutes to our next panel on quantum physics. Just a quick public service announcement. If you have lost a wallet, we have it sitting at the registration desk. And if you can describe it, we'll give it to you. Thanks.
It actually worked out well.
I thought so too. I thought so too. So, okay, yeah, if you could do this one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you please take your seats, we'll go ahead and get started here with our next panel on quantum sciences. Thank you for your attention and turn it over to Major Stewart. Thank you.
Welcome to our panel on quantum technology. Again, I think this will be a very exciting panel, especially following the AI discussion. So I'm going to do a quick introductions and then we'll get right into it. So on the panel, we have Colonel Rex Kizai. He's permanent professor and head of the Department of Physics and Meteorology at the Air Force Academy. He entered the Air Force in 1981 as a distinguished graduate of the Air Force Academy. He has served as an Air Force Science and Technology Officer, Associate Professor of Physics at the Air Force Academy, Joint Duty Officer and Deputy Program Manager within the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the Air Force Research Laboratory Commander's representative and staff member of the National Reconnaissance Office Advanced Systems and Technology Directorate, Combat Support and Joint Counter-Air Division Chief at Headquarters Air Force, and Materiel Group Director for Advanced Space Superiority of the Space Superiority Materiel Wing at Los Angeles Air Force Base. Prior to his current assignment, he was the commander of the Phillips Research Site and Materiel Wing Director for the Air Force Research Laboratory Space Vehicles Directorate located at Kirtland Air Force Base. We also have Mr. Jeff Miller. He is the Chief Information Officer and Senior Vice President for IT and Security at Quantinuum. Quantinuum's mission is to accelerate quantum computing and use its power to positively transform the world. Jeff previously served as CIO for Honeywell Quantum Solutions and led a cross-functional team responsible for information technology, cybersecurity, and physical security. Jeff held numerous management and executive roles at Honeywell in information technology, security, integrated supply chain, and program management. He holds a BS in computer science from the University of Arizona and is a veteran of the US Navy, having attained the rank of commander. Finally, we have Dr. Philip McCoten. He is the executive director of the University of Colorado Boulder's Qubit Quantum Initiative, coordinating quantum research, education, and outreach at the University of Colorado. He earned a PhD in physics at JILA, a joint institute between the University of Colorado Boulder and NIST, where he studied quantex, quantum behavior, and Bose-Einstein's condensates. He holds a BS in electrical engineering from the University of Illinois, a BS in physics from Elmhurst University. His diverse quantum experience, including at Lockheed Martin and Honeywell Quantum Solutions, in research and marketing gives him a unique perspective on the technologies and applications of the quantum ecosystem. The Qubit community includes quantum leaders in academic, government, and industry labs and drives to advance fundamental science and build a strong foundation for novel quantum technologies and their regional rapid commercialization. All that to say, we have some great experts here for this quantum panel. So to start off, I want to give each of you just a few moments to talk about your current work or your current research and how it relates to the quantum field. So sir, if you want to start us off.
I want to check this mic since I'm wearing a mask. Everybody can hear me? Okay, so focusing, well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. Definitely a lesson relearned there when somebody asks you for a short bio and you just give them your standard Air Force biography and you say, pick and choose, hoping to make it short, and then they read the whole thing. You know, lesson learned. I'll make sure I shorten it for you next time. All right. But anyhow, my current position, I'm the permanent professor and department head for the Department of Physics and Meteorology. And what am I doing in the quantum arena? And what I'm doing is the following. Just kind of an initiative that I decided to take many years ago, just like you would do, reading articles, and I'm like, wow, there's really something to quantum technologies. And specifically what I focused on at the time was quantum computing. And I was excited about it, especially as a physicist. And I actually had a student, I think you will enjoy this story, that walked down from the math department. I did not know this student. And he said, sir, I hear that you're a quantum guru, quantum computing guru. I said, well, I don't know who you heard that from. I said, but I do teach quantum physics. I'm very excited about the idea of eventually having quantum computers that we can use to solve very complex problems. I said, how can I help you? He goes, well, I want to do a capstone project and I need a mentor. And I said, okay, I can be your mentor. Had a lot of fun. Out of that, I'm like, you know, this is really a big deal for the nation, quantum technologies, and that's more than just quantum computing. And as the Air Force's Academy, we ought to take the initiative and move forward in this arena. So I got the bright idea that I would create a quantum computing course. And I wanted that course not to just be for physics majors. I wanted any major at the Air Force Academy that could take that course. I would hope just having the core curriculum that you have, you'd be able to take that course. So I created an introduction to quantum computing. And I'm in the 3rd semester of teaching that. And I think it's been very successful. At least that's the feedback I'm getting. So actually, I'm glad that I got to talk about that because I can make my pitch. Register for that course. You will love that course and you can do well in that course. And you do not have to be a physics major or a comp sci major or an electrical engineering major. That would help, but you can be any major. And if you don't believe me, I've got a data point. Very first time I taught the course, spring of 2021, operations research major focused on management. So his advisor was in the management department. He took my course, he earned an A. All right.
Thank you again. I'm Jeff Miller, and I'm honored to be here today. I think for probably many reasons, but 2 kind of stand out. Once you found out I was a Navy veteran, I wasn't sure if I can continue to be invited here. So thanks for having the joint service mindset. I'm also sitting between a quantum guru and a quantum physicist. So I'm definitely the odd person out up here. I'm not a physicist. I'm the IT guy. Happen to have a lot of passion, interest, and desire to see where quantum computing is going. And so when the opportunity presented itself to be part of the what was at that time Honeywell Quantum Solutions about 5 years ago, to join an organization that was building commercial quantum computers was pretty exciting for a computer scientist. And so having that opportunity has been very exciting. But I also want to say, you know, we just celebrated our 1st year birthday as a new company, Quantinuum. We are the product of merging 2 quantum computing companies together. So as I mentioned, Honeywell Quantum Solutions, we've been building quantum computers now for about 8 years, but really in the commercial arena for about 4 to 5 years. And then we merged with a UK-based company, Cambridge Quantum Computing, who was a leader in quantum computing software. So this is going to date myself a little bit, but I always think of the old Reese's peanut butter commercial, 2 great tastes that taste great together. And so that's what I think of Quantinuum. But you also have to remember that we're 1 year old. I don't know what you were like when you were 1 year old, but we're a brand new company. And even though we're the combination of 2 existing companies, we're still in our 1st year. We're starting our 2nd year. So there's a lot to do, but we've already done a lot, which I think is absolutely amazing for our company. So we have commercial running technology. So if you want to use our quantum computer, you can. You can work directly with us to access our systems. You can go through Microsoft Azure Quantum to use our systems. These are available to you to use today. So that's the hardware side. On the application side, we've already put into the marketplace open source and commercial software that are helping to utilize the technologies that exist today from a quantum computing perspective, whether it's a downloading Ticket, which is our open source compiling software that works really well with Lambec, which is a computational library, compositional library. We've had 900,000 downloads of Ticket to date, which means to me that we're starting to get a greater and greater momentum out there in the community about using quantum computers. The second area is around quantum chemistry. So we released in Quanto this year, working with our customers and our partners to create an easier way to access quantum computing for quantum chemistry solutions. We also released Quantum Origin, which is it's a verifiably random quantum encryption key. And so I think there will be opportunities, I think, to talk about cybersecurity and the impacts from a quantum computing perspective. But I really look at that as one of our key products that we have in the marketplace today, where we've taken the entropy out of a quantum computer and be able to create a verifiably random key that we can put into quantum cryptography that hasn't been seen before. So we're very excited about that. But with that, I'll turn it over to Phil.
Thanks, Jeff. So I appreciate you calling me a quantum expert. About 5 years ago, when I was working at Honeywell Quantum Solutions, I was voluntold to join the marketing team. So all my scientist friends said, you joined the dark side. We stopped talking to you at that point. But I'm really thrilled to be here. I really, really appreciate the invitation. This is a beautiful space. I've never been in this building specifically, but I've really enjoyed the partnership that Colonel Kazai and CU have been forging. Qubit is an umbrella organization of quantum science and technology at the University of Colorado. And so you might ask yourself, well, why have an umbrella organization at all? Does the physics department have an umbrella organization? Does the chemistry department have an umbrella organization? And the answer is no. It's because, but quantum is special. It does in Qubit. And it's because quantum is a cross-disciplinary, cross-field technology. As Colonel Kazai was saying, his course is open to really anybody. But I think sometimes there's an elephant in the room when we're talking about quantum. And so maybe just as a show of hands, who here could explain quantum physics or quantum technologies in one sentence? Raise your hand. Not a single person. Okay, well, we can answer that question later. But maybe I'll just say that I think we're in a special place right now in two ways. One is the Air Force specifically, and the DoD broadly, has had a very long tradition and long expertise and long history in quantum technology research and fundamental science involving quantum technologies that have really promised to change the world. It's not an exaggeration to say that we're building, Jeff's building, other people are building machines that are going to change the world in a profound way. And two, I think we're special because in Colorado, this is really kind of the godfather of some of these technologies. So about 30 years ago, at a conference in Boulder, there was this idea of quantum computing had been around for a while, and this idea of breaking encryption, hacking into generating the constituents of very large numbers into their primes had been around for a while, but nobody had known how to build these things. But in 1995, there was a conference and somebody proposed an idea and someone else was sitting in the audience, Dave Wineland, who is a researcher at NIST, who then went off and said, oh, geez, we can do this in our system down the road. And 6 months later, which is an absurdly fast amount of time, demonstrated the very first quantum computing gate, the very first piece of quantum computing hardware. So this area, Colorado broadly, is the godfather of quantum computing and actually many other quantum technologies. I mean, for example, the US National Atomic Clock is down the road in Boulder and NIST. And I think we've had a large part to play in some of the other quantum technologies that have occurred. So because of that long history for the past 30 years, we've grown this organic ecosystem to include the Air Force Academy and now have one of the largest densities of quantum institutions in the country. And so fast forward to about 5 years ago, the US passed a national quantum initiative where all of a sudden these technologies are at the cusp of becoming very useful in transforming our lives. And we continue to maintain that leadership, from the past 5 years to now. So one example of that is you look around the country and you say, where are the quantum computing companies in the US? Where are the people building quantum computing companies? And there's some in the Bay Area, there's some on the East Coast, but it turns out that some of the three largest companies in the world are in Boulder: Atom Computing, Cold Quanta, and Quantinium. And by a very reasonable benchmark that people have put out, Quantinium actually has the world's most powerful quantum computer. And so I think the more I get to stand on a soapbox and say this, the more people realize, oh, wow, we really have this legacy and are leading the field in this very important technology. So that's more about an introduction of quantum and history, but I think it's a good place.
Thank you all for your introduction. So Phil, let's jump off what you just talked about of nobody in this room could easily define quantum. And I think quantum's like AI in the sense that we hear it and we assume that it's going to be a revolution in military affairs and it's going to fundamentally change everything. We hear that, our existing encryptions are defenseless against quantum computing. Is any myth busting necessary? Can you talk to that point? What does quantum mean for the DoD?
Yeah, so I think I'll answer by saying, what is quantum? And then I think I can answer also, what does it mean to the DoD? So quantum, it just turns out that if you look at the very smallest scales of the universe, they act differently than everything else around us. And it's very, very weird. Things can be at two places at the same time. Things are both waves and particles at the same time. And quantum mechanics is really just the label that we put on describing the very smallest cases of the universe. And so it turns out that we already have quantum technologies in our everyday lives, but we don't describe them as single particles moving through a single charged particles moving through lattice materials based on quantized energy levels. We call them transistors. And that means computers. So really computers, the basis of computers is quantum physics. We don't say single electromagnetic modes of a cavity quantized due to due to fundamental energy levels. We call those things lasers. And then we say that created the information age. Similarly with quantized energy states, we don't say, measuring the frequency between quantized energy states. You say clocks, atomic clocks. And so the way that a GPS satellite moves around the world is very, very different than the way an electron spins around the nucleus of an atom. And the only reason is because they're two very different length scales. The forces are very, very similar. They're actually the same equation if you write them down, but they're very, but electrons are very weird, and GPS satellites orbit as we've all seen. So in the past 10-ish years, people have realized there's a couple of tricks of quantum mechanics that we haven't yet exploited. Mainly superposition, mainly this weird thing called entanglement, where if I give you a quarter and I keep one quarter, they're both entangled, we both flip them, we're always guaranteed to get the same answer. Even though we don't know what the answer is ahead of time, even we could be, infinitely far apart, we'll always get the same answer. It's very weird, like that doesn't happen anywhere else. And people realize that there's these tricks that we haven't exploited. And in general, we've started to build technologies with them, and people categorize them into three buckets. One is quantum computing, which is processing information using these special weird rules of math. One is quantum networking, so moving quantum information around. And one is quantum sensing. So clocks are a great example of you cannot build a good enough clock for the GPS satellites unless you use a quantum system. And there's other types of sensing, electromagnetic field sensing, magnetic field sensing, electric field sensing, gravity sensing, all kinds of sensing that are very relevant to both industry and to the DoD. And so you asked, okay, so how does the DoD care about quantum? And I was thinking, well, shoot, what the heck do I know about what the DoD cares about? I have no idea what's going through the director's minds at the DoD. But luckily, there is a guy, his name is John Burke. He's the program director of quantum technologies at the DoD. And he gave a very nice talk in Boulder last week at a workshop I organized. And he presented this slide saying, this is what the DoD cares about. It's coming out in a report pretty soon. And you can see from the orange, blue, and green, networking, sensing, and clocks. And then he's plotted it on impractical to fielded. So you can see GPS has had a very, very high military impact, and it's fielded. And then there's a whole slew of other technologies that exist that people are creating, and I think will move up on the TRL scale to be fielded. And he, I think there's always room for interpretation, but roughly speaking, this is what the DoD cares about in terms of quantum technologies. And so to be clear, again, these are going to have profound impacts on what if you can discover underground tunnels using very, very, very precise gravity sensors? What if you can find submarines using very, very precise magnetic field sensors? What if you can build systems that can tell you if a soldier has a concussion or not right there on the battlefield due to measuring the magnetic fields in their brain? So those are some of the technologies that I've heard people have been talking about in terms of quantum and the impact to the DoD and to the military. Also, what does the Air Force care about quantum? I don't know. I'm not a commander in the Air Force, but luckily Dr. Michael Hayduk has given lots of great talks saying, this is how we envision the future battlefield, and this is how we envision quantum technologies in the future battlefield. One of the largest things I've heard about is GPS denied environments. And many, many quantum scientists, many quantum technology companies are really looking to build those quantum navigation systems. So to operate in a GPS denied environment. I've talked long enough, so please, someone else should go.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very timely and relevant question, and I'm going to focus in kind of one particular area, and then I'll talk about a few others. So I actually had the great opportunity this week. So Tuesday, I was at the Pentagon and met with your Chief Information Security Officer, Mr. Aaron Bishop, and we had a very similar conversation about what does quantum computing really mean to the Air Force when it comes to cybersecurity. So timely in that respect, relevant also, as I'm a Navy veteran, I'm a retired Navy intelligence officer. I also spent, before this role, 8 years leading cybersecurity for Honeywell Aerospace, so the largest business at Honeywell. So this is very meaningful for me and to me. And so as we look at things like post-quantum cryptography, and is this, it's getting a lot of airtime. I think you mentioned myth busting, a lot of hype around this. And we don't really see this as hype. It's a fact. It's going to happen. Computers will be made powerful enough that will eventually break RSA encryption. Point of fact, in 2020, I think RSA 250, which is a 829-bit public cryptography key, was broken by a classic computer. And so that continues to make effort as quantum computers become more powerful. So we just have to accept that that's going to be what is going to happen in the future. We don't know when, we start to talk about bigger forms of RSA encryption, but it is going to happen. It's also nothing new. So NIST in 2016 started looking at this as a potential threat and put out proposals and started a challenge. Who could come up with the best post-quantum cryptographic algorithms? And those are starting to be deployed. And that's, as I mentioned before, we're looking at that from a quantinuum perspective of what can we do today with quantum computers? And that's how we came up with Quantum Origin, our cybersecurity key or our encryption key. But I think if you assume, like with others, that's going to happen, we need to make sure that we're doing all the right things, whether it's the Department of Defense or it's an industry or whatever that may be, to protect that. And I think there's measures that are being taken today. We should probably move faster. That would be my recommendation. But I think we're going to solve for that problem. I think what's scary to me, and I think this was the fun part of the conversation with Mr. Bishop, was, okay, we know that exists. What else is top of mind? What else keeps security professionals awake at night when it comes to quantum computing? And I think it really comes down to really changing the way that we look at cybersecurity defense and cybersecurity offense. We're not there yet. I thought Dr. Martell did such a great job. I thought I was the only one who thought of AI the way that he does. So I thought that was brilliant. But when you really look at machine learning and what quantum computers can do to really unlock the potential and the value of machine learning, it gets very interesting very, very quickly. And then we move that into the cybersecurity space and we start looking at it from a much different perspective that says an adversary could very quickly understand your environment, identify a vulnerability, and establish a beachhead and start acting on objectives in an instant of time. Our cybersecurity defenses, on the other hand, are certainly not designed to detect anything that fast. If you look at the kill chain when it comes to cybersecurity response, how fast can we actually identify a compromise in our environments? It's typically not in seconds, certainly not in minutes. It's not in days, sometimes not weeks, sometimes not even months. It is difficult to find anomalies in these systems. So if a quantum computer is used for that purpose, then the most likely defensive option is a quantum computer. So if you can move at that speed and be able to see so broadly across a wide area of spectrum, how do we start to invest in these types of capabilities so that we are better prepared, whether it's Department of Defense or again, industry, to respond and react and defend against these types of potential threats in the future. So I think that's another really interesting area. I think the third area that I would talk about, maybe less, not quite as sinister as cybersecurity, but really looking at it from, and again, I'll use my experience. So as an intelligence officer, and maybe this term isn't used anymore, but intelligence preparation of the battle space. How can we collect as much information as we possibly can? So as we go into a conflict, we can develop better operational plans, better tactical plans, because we know the adversaries, we know the adversaries' capabilities, we know their vulnerabilities in brand new ways, and we can do it faster than whenever we've ever been able to do before. I think that starts to really unlock some interesting potential. So when we talk about quantum computing, we can solve an optimization problem. What we need to start looking at are what are these common use cases that quantum computers are being used for, and how does that translate into the things that the US military is doing to give us a battlefield advantage going into the future.
Yes. So I really enjoyed those slides, by the way. One of the main points I was going to make, so I'll re-emphasize it. You know, we do have an Air Force, what I call, these are my words, Center of Excellence for Quantum Technologies, and that would be the Air Force Research Laboratory Information Directorate, which you saw Dr. Michael Haydick. The other thing I'd like to mention that I haven't heard here is this is a national issue. It's not just a military issue, it's a national issue. Our national security is going to be affected by quantum technology. So as a nation, we need to do our best to try to be on the leading edge. And you're seeing some of the people here that are on the leading edge, and that's going to span the military, that's going to span industry, that's going to span academia. And there is, if you're interested, you can Google it. There is a national quantum initiative, right, that was signed out by the president in 2018. And there's a lot of pieces to that. And one thing I haven't heard mentioned, yes, we've got to do the science. We've got to do the technology development. But as was emphasized for artificial intelligence, you got to have the people to do that. That's one of the biggest issues we have right now is the workforce to be on the leading edge for quantum technologies across the board, including quantum computing. And part of that workforce is going to be in the Air Force. So I want to make a pitch that you can see there's a lot of potentialities with these technologies that is going to make us win on the battlefield, hopefully. But we're not going to be able to do that if we're not smart about these technologies. So, you know, the Air Force is going to have to get serious about developing the workforce for these new technologies.
So obviously, as you alluded to, we're not the only country that's working on quantum technology. So I'll ask one more question, then hopefully we can open up to questions. Are we in a quantum arms race? And what do cadets and future officers in this room need to be thinking about? What do they need to be working on to participate and compete?
Yeah, absolutely. We're absolutely in a quantum arms race. And the big elephant in the room is China. And there's not a lot of transparency. They've thrown out some numbers like $15 billion behind their quantum initiative, whereas we've put in $1.2 billion. But when you talk to experts in the US government, John, for example, said last week, I know the number that China's putting in there, I can't say it, it's, you know, a huge tease, but it's not quite that big, but we are in an arms race. And really that is driving like a lot of the effort in quantum from a national perspective. On the other hand, as Colonel Kazai said, it's a national priority. There's a National Quantum Initiative Act that was passed. There's a quantum.gov. I never thought I would ever say these words, but there's a very fascinating government report that I very much enjoyed reading on that website. And so that website is full of information. One of the things that points out, one of the recent things that happened is that there was a meeting between like-minded allies at the White House, pointing out that this is actually an international effort. There's a global supply chain for these technologies, and it's really a global effort to build these technologies. We can't boil the ocean, we can't do it all. And I think one of the things that the White House said is we want to work with our international partners around this. So again, another little known fact, but the country of Finland called up the governor of Colorado about a year ago and said, we want to partner with Colorado on a couple key strategic technologies. We partner on aerospace. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of aerospace in Colorado. We have a partner on renewable energy and green energy. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's in Colorado. And we want to partner in quantum. And the state of Colorado was like, oh, we knew quantum was a thing, but really, quantum? That's your top three? And yes, it was, because it is such a big international, global issue. So.
I couldn't agree more with the arms race. And again, going back to my past life and understanding the capabilities that exist out there. So if you really want to dive into it, just look at the most recent 5-year plan from China. You'll see quantum computing in there. And that's usually a kind of a CCIR, Commander's Critical Intelligence requirement when it comes out of China. So we have to understand that. I think, a really interesting thing from when it comes to quantum computing companies, I have a 21-person team focused on IT, cybersecurity, and physical security. We don't have a lot of quantum computing companies that are investing in that type of, whether it's security or protecting our intellectual property, our trade secrets. So I think it's very unique, and we understand the threat that exists out there. But to answer your question, going to, what do you need to know, or what can you be doing? I often get asked questions. I teach a course at Arizona State University, and I do mentoring through University of Arizona. And one of the common questions is, what does it take to be a successful executive? And I've really boiled that down, and this will be relevant to two things. One is being very well read on the topics, that you are responsible for. And the other one is about your network. So why is that important, and why is that relevant to answer your question? So the first one is really going back to education and awareness, that being well read. And I think the Colonel mentioned this, workforce development. We're in conversations with a number of different academic institutions, a number of different universities. We have a CRADA that was established here at the U.S. Air Force Academy last year. So we've already opened the door to that type of academic involvement. And it's happening in other areas as well. But I think it goes back to the conversation around artificial intelligence. It goes back to the word cyber. I'm borrowing from Mr. Bishop here. The word cyber has been thrown around so much in the last decade that it lost its original meaning, just like artificial intelligence. I'm seeing that happen with quantum. Quantum is a pretty sexy term. It's thrown out there for marketing reasons. There's television shows about it. There's all kinds of, you hear quantum teleportation and everybody's thinking Star Trek. And so I think we really need to start establishing more classes like the one that you have, so that we can start to build the foundational knowledge, just understanding the terminology. I don't know if you followed Dr. McCoten's earlier description of quantum computing, but it's a journey to get to understand this. And so not only building that baseline knowledge and understanding, but then taking it to the next level. We build ion trap quantum computers. That's not the only technology. There's annealing, there's photonics, there's superconducting. Then you get into the different types of algorithms and the problems that you're solving, whether it's chemistry or it's cybersecurity. Then you start to get into that next kind of, consider a 301 course of sorts. It says, how do we put all of this together? The knowledge and understanding of what quantum computing really is. Then we start to look at what the different competing quantum technologies are, because they're all unique in their own ways and they all have advantages and disadvantages. Then how do we take our knowledge about algorithms and algorithm development and put that into something actually practical and be able to go and do that? And so I think that's a really interesting area, and it's one we need to be investing in, whether that, I think the U.S. Air Force Academy would be very proud to own their own quantum computer. So give me a ring, and I'm happy to build one for you at any time. We can make that happen overnight. But all kidding aside, I do think that's where it starts, having access to systems so that you can start playing with those and you can start testing them and you can start learning. There's a lot of great things to be done from a simulation emulation perspective, but it makes a big difference when you're actually working on an actual quantum computer. Then moving into the networking side, as I mentioned, we established a CRADA here at the Air Force Academy. We have established relationships with different academic programs throughout the US. We're part of a quantum initiative through the Arizona State University. We're working directly with a number of different DoD components. We're working globally. We're trying to influence how export control are applied to quantum computing. We're working with different legal implications and other implications, human implications to what quantum computing is going to bring on a global scale. And so when you kind of look at all of that together, you got to build your network. So as you grow in your careers, it's the people that you know that are there to help you. Same thing happens here in quantum computing. We're not going to be able to accelerate without the help of the ecosystem, without the help of our partners, whether it's the Air Force Academy or someone else, and then get well read and start at the basics. I'm going to do one quick kind of, I guess, interactive thing. So this is not a plug for anything other than my running joke is my sister-in-law keeps asking me to come down to her school in Dallas and teach her third graders about quantum computing, but I have a second grader knowledge. So thankfully, one of our scientists, Bob Coca, who is a internationally recognized expert in quantum natural language processing, made a book just for me, and we actually published it. But this is where it starts. This is how we start to increase the knowledge and awareness around. And so the interactive part is, out of the cadets, only the cadets, is anyone here originally from the state of Arizona? Raise your hand. Wow, none? You're making it really tough. How about Washington State? Oh, okay. West side or east side? East, all right. Either other Easterns? Okay. Where east, where at? Kennewick, all right. Well, my family's from the Tri-Cities area, so come on up, you win a book. Yeah, hey, there you go, bear down, all right. So, and again, I think that's really where we need to start, is right there. Just walked away with a really great way to begin that journey to understanding quantum computing in a unique and different way. So with that, I'll hand over to the Colonel.
All right. Well, I don't know how I'm going to top that. I'll just piggyback on that, and I would like to say we do have these partnerships ongoing. We're establishing these collaborations. That is one thing that we need to do. What can we do to prepare for this future? And I'll give you some specifics. So I mentioned the course that I developed. 3 of the students that took that course through our collaboration that we had set up, we had this bright idea, could they continue their quantum education through University of Colorado Boulder? Because we don't have a quantum minor right now, an academic minor at the academy. And so myself and Lieutenant Colonel James Scoville, who's sitting there in the audience, we worked with Phil, we worked with Dr. Josh Combs at University of Colorado. And we said, hey, is there any way we can make this work? And we could get 3 students enrolled in Dr. Combs' course on quantum hardware after getting introduced to what is quantum computing all about. Now, you are going to have a very technical physics-y background if you want to actually study quantum hardware. Guess what the first answer was from the institution? Does anybody want to take a guess when we proposed this idea? Sorry. Got a 50-50 chance, by the way. No. Then the next question was, well, if we could pull it off, would they be able to get academic credit on their transcript? No. I mean, there were just lots of no's. So we just persevered, and it's happening. The 3 students are enrolled. They're going to get credit as University of Colorado Boulder students. We found the funding for that. They had to enroll as Boulder students, but they also enrolled as Air Force Academy students, and they'll get credit on their transcript. So that's a specific, but it helps me emphasize, if anything about today on quantum technologies is exciting you, then what I can recommend, what can you do? You can continue to learn. I didn't know we were going to bring books as props. Actually, I didn't even think of the idea, but now we have that idea out there. I'll recommend another one that you can pick up. You can get it off of Amazon. It's not very much money. It's paperback. It's Q for Quantum. It's written by Dr. Terry Rudolph. He's actually one of the key people in Psi Quantum out on the West Coast. We heard about these concentration areas. It's one of the best books I've seen if you just want to get a gentle introduction to quantum computing. So pick that book up. Through this collaboration, there's online courses. I'll put in a plug for University of Arizona. We have this collaboration ongoing. They let us know they were putting together a winter school for quantum networks. we wanted to know what this was all about. So I enrolled myself kind of as a test case. Captain in my department enrolled herself kind of as a test case. Took those courses. They did an outstanding job, by the way, 9 different courses. So there is all kinds of stuff out there that you can start educating yourself as well. And it's really high quality educational material.
Well, it looks like we've run out of time, but thank you so much for your comments. This is obviously a really important field. I hope everybody understands the severity of the quantum arms race we have found ourselves in. And then hopefully, Colonel Kazai, you get some more students signing up for that class as a result of this. But we'd like to thank you very much for journeying here, not very far for you, but for the rest of you, for being part of this symposium. We really appreciate it.
All right, just a couple announcements as we get ready to break for lunch here. Thank you again for all of the wonderful speakers and the interaction that we've had so far today. Hopefully it's continuing to challenge you, just like Colonel Swain has given us that charge. Continue to think about how we are going to not only use technology, but continue to think about our threats that are out there and how it's going to change us, not only as strategists, but just officers in general. So for lunch, it's going to be an open lunch today from 10:45 to 12:15. We encourage everybody to be back by 12:15, maybe a few minutes early before that, and gather in your seats. We'll be kicking off right at 12:15 today for our next speaker from NASIC. And then for my other activities for lunchtime, I just need to see Major General Wright, Colonel Badek-Magal, Colonel Swain, Colonel Byerly, Chief Cohen, and Dr. Leonard here on the south side of the building after this. That's all we have for now. Thank you guys again for your time and attention, and we'll see you guys after lunch. Thank you so much.